So many people want to drain the swamp. We send a crazy man to the White House to attempt to do it. No, no, it's the wrong thing to do. We need to save the swamp. Dr. Thomas Kreinenwetter is here to tell us all about saving the swamp.
That's right.
It's about time.
Absolutely.
It is a precious institution.
It's what made America great. And if we want to stay great, we got to make the swamp bigger.
Right, so I just make it clear. Here it is, the ode to saving the swamp, which is important. You lay it out as only an intellectual can, why we need to save the swamp. Let me just say something. People on our libertarian side, we're not really good at satire.
We're actually bad at it.
We're bad at satire. This is spectacular. What was the idea?
Well, so I've been in the part of the freedom movement my entire adult life, and I have stepped back and I've been looking at what's been happening with government over the last century. Most people, their political memory, runs to the last candidate.
Yeah.
Conservatives today think everything bad started with Barack Obama. The truth is, this administrative state started being constructed more than a century ago, and the conservative movement has been gaining steam, creating institutions, raising lots of money, doing all kinds of things since the 1950s. And since the 1950s, government keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So I've stepped back and think, maybe everything that the ordinary think tanks do, they come up with policy studies and white papers and data sets, and they show how Social Security isn't going to be around in a and all these wonderful things. It's all true, it's good research, but it's not ending in a result of the administrative state getting smaller.
It's changed the world now that government is shrinking. It was all from those white papers. White papers do it all.
Well, and that's the problem. I'm looking for a new tool. What else can we use in the fight for freedom and the fight to scale back this unconstitutional leviathan that we have? And I thought, there's an incredibly potent tool, humor and satire, that has shaped entire cultures. It has changed the political landscape on numerous occasions throughout history. Why not harness that power of humor and satire and aim it at the unconstitutional administrative swamp of today? That's the purpose of Save the Swamp.
Tell me about, I want to make sure I get his name, Filbert Dempster.
Yes.
Who is Filbert Dempster, and how did you convince him to do the foreword for Saving the Swamp?
Filbert Dempster is a made-up personality. He's not real. He has a wonderful long...
No. He is real. Allow me. He is the Senior Assistant Deputy Director of Monitoring and Tracking within the Office of Diversity Management and Equal Opportunity, the United States Department of Regulatory Affairs.
That's right. He has a really long administration. When I introduce Filbert in front of a live audience, I say, it's sort of like men and sex. The longer the title, the more impressive if you're a bureaucrat. And when I'm doing this in live shows, I actually step into character. I will invite Filbert onto the stage, and then I don a little short-sleeved, bureaucratic shirt and a clip-on tie and a lanyard. And the whole idea of this book is to give advice. It's an advice book. It's a career guidebook for young, budding bureaucrats. So in our live shows, Filbert Dempster comes on stage, me, and gives advice about key things such as if you're a bureaucrat, an unelected government employee, you have to learn the art of failure, because the way that your budgets get bigger is when you can go to Congress and talk about how miserably you failed in everything. And it's hard to learn to fail really well.
But you say that with a twinkle in your eye, but I look at the Forestry Service and the lousy job they do.
Yeah.
They purposely wait until there's massive forest fires,
right,
and then they go, well, we just don't have the funds to manage it. And every time the forest burns up, they get a raise. And they get a raise for failing.
And what I explain to audiences in characters, I say, sometimes this means property is destroyed. Sometimes people die. Sometimes people can't get the medicines they need because the FDA won't approve them. And you know who wins every time government fails? You know who wins? The bureaucrats. The bureaucrats in government win because that's how they get bigger budgets, more resources. They go to Congress and complain. So the whole book is this kind of tone, this kind of spirit, giving practical advice to bureaucrats. I comment in there, all of us, there are people that we'd really like to get back at, somehow get revenge on. Well, there's no better place, there's no better job in the world than to be an unelected government bureaucrat, because you can't get fired. You're not going to be fired. So if your ex-spouse or someone you don't, go harass them, shut down their business. It's great.
No, you can't. When you say you can't get fired, you can't get fired. If you look at any union contract with the government agency, you look at the dance of the lemmings that happens with public school teachers. They have buildings in New York City where disciplined teachers just sit. They won't get fired, but they can't be fired for cause. So you do have that. But the power regulators have destroy businesses, destroy lives. You talk about budding bureaucrats, but given the fact that more and more power goes from elected officials to regulatory agencies that only appointed people run, that's where the power is.
And what I present in the book is I say that's exactly how it should be, because the people who get elected, members of Congress or a state legislature, what is their qualification to be in office? They're popular. They were able to win votes usually by lying and taking bribes and flattering people and promising things they can't deliver. Whereas a professional, tenured civil servant, his credential or her credential is the fact that they're an expert. They have a fancy degree, and so they should be the ones making these regulations that have all the full power of law. That's the tenor of the book.
Let me ask about the audiences. One available on Amazon. You ought to go grab it. But Filbert also goes out and speaks.
Yeah.
Now I get it for cranky conservative libertarians who don't like the regulatory state. They've got to find it really enjoyable. But sometimes progressives have to be in those crowds as well. What do they think about Filbert?
The response is fantastic. So I was shocked. I was surprised. This is a new development for me.
You're an academic.
Yeah, I've been a classroom teacher most of my life, and now I'm out there doing something like a stand-up comedy routine. And the two responses I was not expecting. First of all, the people who love this show and love the book the most are bureaucrats. They love it because someone's finally telling the truth about what they experienced.
I don't believe that. I refuse to believe it. You're telling me bureaucrats come up after one of your talks and go, you're so on. I love it.
The very first time I gave this performance, a woman who's been a nurse at the VA for 35 years came up and gave me a big hug. And she said, I'm so happy someone's just telling it like it is to be in a bureaucracy. And she starts to regale me with stories of all the ridiculous incompetencies and, you know, how it's more important to follow regulations than to follow common sense and all these kinds of things. So that was one surprise. The other surprise is the reaction from very serious progressive activists. It's a little unnerving, it's a little disarming in a way, because I'm up there, first of all, I'm joking, I'm laughing and having a good time, I'm not attacking anybody, and I'm saying things like, hey, when it comes to government programs and policies, results don't matter. And then I go through a list of, like I talk about the war on poverty and how many, trillions of dollars we've spent and poverty levels go up, and yet no one thinks about actually ending the war on poverty. And progressive activists, it puts them in an unusual position. They scold me, and the way they scold me is really interesting. They say, government programs and policies are really important. They're progressives, after all.
And by the way, genuinely.
These are activists.
They believe, of course, they believe there are governmental solutions to our ills.
And they don't like that I'm poking fun in this way, and they say, we should absolutely pay attention to the results of government programs. Right, so I just step back and I sort of chuckle and I say, really, you, the progressive activists, you're suggesting that we scrutinize and measure and analyze the results of government regulations. Right, and I'm thinking, this is what conservatives and libertarians have been doing for 50 years, and I'm having this progressive activist tell me that we really need to scrutinize the results of government programs.
From their point of view, they want the government program to succeed.
Sure.
And so, by putting the mirror to their face, going, well, we need to prove that it works. Yeah, that would be beautiful. How do the cranky taxpayers
Oh, so we were
guys
at
like me. We like it.
Filbert Dempster, my character, showed up at an event that Independence Institute was coordinating, and he did a little moderating, and a taxpayer stood up, was a little angry, and he was angry at Dempster. He said, you bureaucrats, government's getting so big and expensive, we can't afford to pay for it. Have you seen these modern budgets at the state level, at the national level? So Dempster responded in the spirit of the book and said, that just means you taxpayers should work harder and pay more in taxes because we bureaucrats are entitled to these nice, cozy jobs.
It's good stuff. All right. Save the swamp. Don't have fun. There's nothing that pisses off a progressive than a libertarian having a good time. I found that. All right.
This book is all about having a good time.
Amazon.com, Save the Swamp. Thomas, thank you as always. Hey, check out the Denver Post. Look for me there, KHOW Radio, as well as the Independence Institute. Go to independenceinstitute.org or simply thinkfreedom.org. We'll see you next week.